Azure Automation, managing Runbook Authentication and modules. We set up the Azure Automation account, authored a PowerShell runbook, and incorporated parameters and variable assets. The next step is to understand how we can access and manage Azure resources from our runbooks. In this guide, you will learn how Azure Automation can authenticate and access Azure resources. We will also take a look at importing PowerShell modules to add applets to our runbooks. When you're finished, you'll have the skills to elevate your runbooks to the next level. Prerequisites. Before you begin this guide, you'll need the following: Azure tenant and subscription. Administrator account with sufficient permissions on a subscription, such as owner, or a role containing Microsoft.Azure Automation resource authorization. PowerShell knowledge. Azure Automation Run As account. When I created the Azure Automation account in the first article, I enabled the option to create an Azure Run As account. By enabling this option, Azure will automatically create an Azure Add application. You can use this application identity to authenticate to an Azure subscription to access and manage resources. During the Run As account creation, Azure performs several other functions such as adding a self-signed certificate to the application account, creating a service principal identity for the application, assigning the contributor role for the account in the current subscription, creating automation connection assets named Azure Run As certificate and Azure Run As connection. If you want to view more information about the Run As account, from the Automation Account Resource page, navigate to Account Settings greater than Run As accounts. You can view the account's properties in the portal, including the certificate thumbprint, the Azure Add application information, service principal ID, role assignments, and runbooks. At the top of the Properties page, note an action named Renew Certificate. The account certificate is only valid for 1 year, so be sure to renew before expiration to keep your runbooks from failing. Along with the Run As account, Azure will create two connection assets, Azure Run As certificate and Azure Run As connection. The certificate asset authenticates to Azure so the runbook can manage Azure Resource Manager resources. The connection asset contains the application ID, tenant ID, subscription ID, and certificate thumbprint. Basically, everything you need to connect to Azure to start managing resources. In an upcoming example, I'll use this connection to connect to Azure and to retrieve some resources. Automation account modules. Before I create a new runbook to manage my Azure resources, I need to make sure I have the right PowerShell commands available. When you create a new automation account, Azure will automatically import some PowerShell modules for you, such as Azure.Automation, Azure.Computer, and Azure.Resources. However, these modules are a part of the older Azure PowerShell module, which Microsoft is no longer developing. Microsoft has replaced this module with the newer As PowerShell module. Luckily, I'm not stuck using the older modules in my PowerShell runbooks. I can import the new As modules into the automation account for use with my PowerShell code. From the automation account, navigate to Shared Resources greater than Modules Gallery. The first module I need to import is the As.Accounts module so I can use the Connect As account applet in my runbook. Search for As.Accounts, then select the resulting module. From the module page, I can search the module for the applets and functions to verify it has what I need. From here, I can select the import action at the top. Once the import is successful, I need to navigate the modules gallery and perform the same steps for the as.resources module so I can use the get a resource group in my runbook. The imports can take a few minutes, but you can verify the status by navigating back to shared resources greater than modules. In this list of modules, verify the module import progress in the status column. From this modules page, also note there are options to import a custom module. Select the plus add a module and choose a zip file that contains the module code. Note that the module code's file name must match the file name of the zip file. Importing custom-written module is a fantastic feature of Azure Automation that allows you to write a runbook to fit any scenario. Connect to Azure from PowerShell Runbook. Back in the Automation account, I will create a new runbook that will connect to Azure and retrieve my resource groups. In the Automation account, navigate to Process Automation greater than Runbooks, then select plus create a runbook. From here, input a name for the runbook, select the PowerShell runbook type, then select create. In the Edit PowerShell runbook window, I need to write code that will retrieve the information stored in Azure Run As connection. For this, I use the Get Automation Connection kubelet and specify the name of the Run As connection. If I store the connection information to a variable, I can reference the tenant id, application id, and certificate thumbprint in the Connect As account kubelet to authenticate to my Azure tenant. $connection equals Get Automation Connection name Azure Run As connection. Connect As account service principal. Tenant $connection.tenanted. Application id $connection.applicationid. Certificate thumbprint $connection.certificate thumbprint. If you do not remember the kubelet to retrieve the Run As connection asset, remember you can expand assets on the left to view saved connections and other assets. Selecting Add to Canvas will insert the necessary PowerShell code. Once the runbook connects, I can now use other as kubelets to work with Azure resources. Since I imported the as.resources module, I can retrieve all my resource groups using the get a resource group kubelet. From here, I will save the runbook code, publish, and then execute it.